So as that first part of the cell that we're going to look at is the phospholipid bilayer called the cell membrane. It's a double layer. I'm using a tablet to show it. So there we go. There's our cell membrane, and pretty much it's the outer barrier. So it's the analogy I like to use is it's kind of like the bouncer at the club, right? It keeps an eye out on who's coming in and who's going out. And the same thing goes with the actual cell. Now, let's look down at the cell membrane now of that of a plant. And I'm actually going to use green because, as we shown before, with the animal cell, it's a lot more rounded. As I've said before, the cell membrane pretty much, or between the plant and animal cell, one of the unique differences is the fact that their outside shape, right? So we know that with the plant cells, more brick-like, straight edges, because, well, think of parts of a plant, right? Think of the stem of a plant, right? So pretty much, and this is really what we call, it's not really their membrane, but it's actually considered their cell wall. And so it's a thick cell wall, and that's a unique part only in plant cells. So we have the cell wall. Right, and the cell wall, pretty much, as we said, pretty much only in plant cells, some bacteria, some fungi, and some algae actually have cell walls. Now, the cell wall, very rigid frame around the cell, provides strength, provides protection, provides support for the plant. But also on the inside is this double layer membrane. So the cell membrane, also in a plant cell, is just found on the inside. And so I'm just going to do the inner membrane part. So think of this green part here being part of the phospholipid bilayer. So this layer here will be considered the cell membrane of the plant cell. So notice here, plant cell, right, a little more square in shape, edges, while the animal cell is considered very round. So next part that we're going to look at with both cells is really everything that's on the inside, right? So really all this inner space here, right, and is where we will house all the organelles, right? So within all this space is where the organelles, but think of it almost kind of like a swimming pool, right? And within here, right, we have something called pretty much cytoplasm, and this cytoplasm is pretty much is this jelly-like substance that fills the inside of the cell, and it actually surrounds all the organelles. So, pretty much it's within the cytoplasm that we actually contain the nutrients that are required by the cell to actually carry on all of its life processes. So we will label the cytoplasm later, just because we're going to be putting in our organelles. So now we start off with the cell membrane, and within the cell membrane, as we said, is the cytoplasm. Plant cells have a cell wall outside of the cell membrane. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually start off with one of the more important, I can't say the more important, because they're all equally important in their own way, is the nucleus. And the nucleus pretty much is also a double layer membrane. Okay, and it's found in both cells. So the nucleus is considered the control center of the cell, right? It controls all the activities in the cell, growth, reproduction, and whatnot. So now the nucleus, as we said, pretty much it's a nuclear membrane or a nuclear envelope. So here we have the nucleus, right? So, and pretty much the outside part of the nucleus is really the nuclear envelope or the nuclear membrane. Okay, and pretty much it also has pores within it. One thing I didn't say about the cell membrane is very porous. It's what we call a selectively permeable, right? Selectively permeable. Okay, and selectively permeable means it is very selective to allow, right, permeate throughout the cell. So it's selective on what it lets in and what it lets out, right? So really tiny particles are easy to come in and out of the cell, while things that are slightly bigger require channels to actually make its way in and out of the cell, as you're going to see in a future video on that. Okay, and the same thing goes with the nuclear membrane. So we're pretty much within the nucleus, right? In this nucleus is where pretty much all the DNA, all the DNA can be found of a plant cell or of an animal cell, right? And this pretty much is considered the blueprint of life for that organism, right? So everything is there. It tells you everything that it needs to almost reproduce that cell. So all the most important information that you're going to learn in a future lesson on genetics, right? When we're talking about certain traits and hair color and eye color and other characteristics that are encoded within the DNA. Okay. Within here also, you will find something called a nucleolus, really dark piece, and we won't talk too much about the nucleolus. And within here, as we said, pretty much it's granular fibers. I'm trying to show it, right? And so, in the form of chromatin, and ultimately during during cell division and during mitosis, right? This chromatin starts off with a centromere, right? Eventually, these start to coil, right? Start to coil up, right? And thicken, so become more visible, and you'll be able to see these stages during mitosis. And what happens is it does an exact duplicate of itself on the other side. So what happens is it forms almost like this X shape here, which enables us pretty much, it'll cut it in half to allow one part of the genetic code, which is an exact duplicate on both sides, to go in one cell and one to go in another. And like I said, we are going to see that in a future lesson when we're talking about cell division. So let's get rid of some of this stuff here so it doesn't get in the way. Okay, so let's draw it now on our plant cell down here. Let's draw that control center, because both plant and animal cells have this control center, which is pretty much very important to the cell. And as we said, it's a double layer with the nucleolus, and also it also has its what do you call it? Chromatin, right? The granular, which makes up pretty much DNA. And DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acids. And I don't really expect my students to really know that, but again, if you're, you want to know kind of thing, just look it up. Deoxyribo. Now, actually, let me say it slower. Deoxy. You sound it out. Deoxyribonucleic acids, and that's really what they are. And we'll learn more about DNA and its and the sequences in a pretty much in a future video, right? So next, what we're going to look at is pretty much stemming from the nucleus. Okay, is pretty much almost like a passageway. Right? Almost like a passageway. It really pretty much interconnected tubules that help carry material throughout the cell. Right? Oops, let me use blue. Okay, so a little passageway on very much stemming from the nucleus. And there are two distinct types, and I'm just gonna draw them. They're gonna look the same, with one unique region or one unique characteristic. So as we said, the endoplasmic reticulum organelle, series of these interconnected tubules that help carry material throughout the cell. So it's almost kind of like a subway system. You know, some kind of like almost like a hallway, so to speak. But what we're going to do is we're going to draw little dots. Okay, little dots on one of the sets. Okay, so these dots are called ribosomes. Okay, so these dots here are called ribosomes. Okay, so these ribosomes, pretty much, they're small, they're dense-looking organelles. You can actually see them in barely in the with the light compound light microscope, and they're attached to this endoplasmic reticulum. So let me actually label that so you know what I'm talking about. This is considered the endoplasmic. Cannot do eyes with this tablet. Endoplasmic, there's a little bit of a lag on it. Reticulum. Okay, so we'll use the letters ER to shorten it. Never just use ER. Your teacher, if you're like me, I want it written at least once, and then show me the point form. But if you've got two sets of endoplasmic reticulum, okay, you've got this one set that's got these dark, dense objects, and you've got the ones that do not. These ones with the dots are considered the rough, right? Because they're bumpy, right? They've got ribosomes that make them bumpy, right? So these rough endoplasmic reticulum, this is involved with the production of proteins, right? So it gives it this rough appearance with the ribosomes, and pretty much the ribosomes here, right? These dots is pretty much the site in which proteins that the body needs, or that cell needs, actually get assembled, and we're going to talk about that in a future video when we're talking about more on the biology on a senior level. Now, this smooth one here is also considered an endoplasmic reticulum, but this is considered the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So it's the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and pretty much these are pretty much known for the production of fats and oils. Now they're smooth, right, in nature because they do not contain these ribosomes. Okay, so let's go down and actually put these in to the plant cell now. Okay, so also the plant cell contain these smooth and rough endoplasmic reticulum. So let's just draw them in. Right, this passageway. Right, we're going to draw a second one. Right, and as we said, one of them is going to be the rough because they will contain the ribosomes, right? Protein manufacturing tubules, or is the rough endoplasmic reticulum, right? Assembly of proteins here with these ribosomes, and here, as we said, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum associated with the production of fats and oil. So we know so far both plants and animal cells have these same organelles. Okay, so now moving on from these, and I'm gonna use let's use purple here. You'll find something that may look like stacks of pancakes or whatnot, and these are considered, and they've got a couple of names: Golgi bodies or Golgi apparatus. Okay. And I'm going to refer to it as Golgi bodies, just to kind of make things a little bit simpler here. So now these are pretty much it's the site of packaging, right? So what happens is these Golgi bodies are going to receive the proteins from the endoplasmic reticulum, right? And primarily the rough endoplasmic reticulum, right? So proteins are going to make their way in here, right? And let me draw maybe something that might represent the protein packages. And so they get stored in there, right? It's a packing company, so to speak, right? So the Golgi bodies, they modify, they sort out, they package proteins that eventually get delivered within the cell, that get delivered outside of the cell, right? So pretty much they're almost made by membrane of the this very similar to that of the cell membrane. So what happens is pretty much a protein that gets gets sent out. Oops, wrong color. That gets sent out, gets packaged in these vesicles, right? And these vesicles make their way towards, and they'll be throughout the cell, these vesicles that pretty much are storage centers, right? So they'll store material, right? They'll store proteins, and what's going to happen here, let's say with this protein here, it makes its way towards the membrane, and then pretty much what it does is it fuses with the membrane. Okay? So it fuses with the membrane. Okay, and pretty much it opens up part of the cell, right? But notice how this vesicle becomes a part of the cell membrane. So notice it still keeps everything sealed, but now it allows for pretty much the movement of this material outside of the cell. Okay, so we've got here pretty much what we call the vesicles that are in, they're very small in animal cells. And let's go down to the animal cell, into the plant cell here at the bottom. It appears I have a bit of lagging here with this. So what we're going to do is we are going to draw our Golgi bodies. Okay, so here we go, storage, right? And let's draw a protein maybe in there, right? That gets sorted, gets modified, gets secreted out, right? But within here, what's going to happen is plant cells usually have a very large vacuole. Right? So pretty much they have a very large vacuole. Nutrients, wastes, other substance that pretty much the cell is going to use actually get stored in this region here. So here, we're going to label it as a vacuole. Right? So plant cells have large vacuoles, while animal cells more consider, the vacuoles aren't really considered, they're more considered vesicles, and they're really tiny. So plant cells, really one central vacuole stores the water that the cell needs, right? So water, when it enters a cell, this vacuole will swell up to store as much water as it possibly can, which also gives the firmness to this plant cell. Okay. So now another really important part of, and let's try to get back up again, and let's look at the animal cell. Very important organelle that you will be focusing on at the senior levels to study, and its importance are these almost sausage-like organelles that have the inside that look like this almost. And there are a whole bunch depending on, I guess, the type of animal cell, right? Some animal cells require a lot of it because it's got a very unique importance. Okay, and these are considered the powerhouse of the cell. And the powerhouse of the cell is called mitochondria. Okay, I'm going to put the singular version, right? Mitochondrion. This is singular, right? So it becomes mitochondria if it's plural, right? So one mitochondrion, two mitochondria. And as we said, this is pretty much considered the powerhouse of the cell. All cells require some kind of source of energy, right? And this mitochondria is what's responsible for forming the majority of the energy. right? So when our body breaks down glucose, right, we can produce energy. But there's an additional step that occurs within the mitochondria that allows us to make exponential amount of energy. And that energy that you'll eventually study at the, a senior level, not really letting me erase it, oh well, is called ATP. And maybe at the junior level you might not need it, but ATP is pretty much the structure of energy that that you'll be studying in terms of what does the mitochondria do, and it makes a lot of this, right? This is pretty much the chemical energy that's found in the sugars that we eat, right? Glucose, very important carbohydrate that we actually consume. And again, both plant and animal cells actually have these mitochondria. Okay, so both plant and animal cells need to produce energy, right? That's known fact, right? That's why you will find the mitochondria in both plant and animal cells. Okay, so here we've gotten, as we said, the mitochondria. Another thing that you will find in cells, pretty much both plant and animal cells, and it's pretty much kind of part of these vesicles. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to name one of these vesicles. We are going to name it, let's draw a different one here, if it's letting me draw it. Oh, there we go. So let's draw it, and we're going to name it a lysosome. Okay, lysosome pretty much contain digestive enzymes, right? Enzymes are a chemical that helps speed up some kind of process, right? It's a protein that speeds up chemical reactions in cells, right? So if we want to speed up a reaction, we want to introduce an enzyme. But so there's an enzyme found in these lysosomes that help break down material. It also has the nickname suicide sac. Okay, it's got a nickname called suicide, really cool name. I guess whomever. Suicide sac. And what it does, really, it commits suicide to the cell. So if there's some invading bacteria or some kind of damaged cell, this lysosome is going to break apart, secreting its enzyme throughout the cell, thus killing the cell, right? Committing suicide to the cell to help get rid of this foreign body. Okay. So now let's look at the plant cell now. And actually, before we get to the plant cell, pretty much, let me just kind of, as we said, everything inside that is surrounding all these organelles, this, right, as I'm coloring in yellow, this is considered the cytoplasm. Okay, so that jelly-like substance that we talked about within the plant cell and the animal cell. So let's look at another distinct characteristic that is only found in plant cells that is not found in the animal cell. And pretty much one of the most important differences between a plant cell and an animal cell is the following, right? Let's face it, plant cells, they grow where they're growing, right? We are hungry, we go to the refrigerator, we get food. We go to the mall, we get some food. We go to the supermarket, we get food. But plants, they're very unique, and they're stuck where they're located. And so they have this green substance, these green organelles, right, that have packages pretty much of thylakoid, right, that allows them pretty much to produce their own energy, right? Their own energy. So we've got something called chloroplasts, right? So here we have chloroplast, right? And these chloroplasts pretty much only found in plant cells, Okay, and pretty much these organelles, as we said, only found in plant cells, some algae, right? There's a green substance within. This is what's responsible for photosynthesis. So it's the chloroplast that is responsible for allowing for plants to create their own food. Okay, so pretty much within here, right, whatever gives this green pigment, right? Okay, this green pigment, okay, is called chlorophyll. Right? So this green chlorophyll uses pretty much the energy from the sun to convert the things it needs, right? We water the plant, we expose it to the air, which has carbon dioxide that it takes in, and in return, when it takes in the sun's rays, it takes in carbon dioxide, it takes in the water, it actually will produce sugar in the form of glucose, and it will produce oxygen that we need, and this is the process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. Okay, and this is a process very unique only to plant cells. This is how they're able to take in the sun's rays, right? So here's our sun, right? Take in the sun's rays, right? Using the chlorophyll within the chloroplasts to produce glucose, which is very important for the plant. We've already looked at both the plant and animal cell, and let's look at some of the differences that are actually between plant and animal cells. All right? Plant cells contain a specialized chemical compound called chlorophyll, as we talked about before, a pigment that makes photosynthesis possible. Plant cells have a large central vacuole, as we've shown before, while animal cells pretty much have a lot smaller vacuoles. They're almost considered vesicles in animal cells. Some plant cells store energy in the form of starch or oil, such as cornstarch and canola oil, while animal cells store energy in the form of glycogen, which is considered a carbohydrate, or pretty much as lipids in the form of fats, fat storage. Another thing, some animal cells have specialized compounds. One of the examples here pretty much is hemoglobin that's found in red blood cells. Red blood cells, so a cell, which is a little bit different from the types of cells that I've shown you in terms of animal and plant cell, and cholesterol that can be found in some other types of cells. And finally, animal cells have centrioles, and we're going to talk a little more about centrioles when we discuss cell division. So centrioles, they're paired structures that are involved in cell division. They're involved with the production of spindle fibers, and plant cells unfortunately do not have centrioles.